Aloha, and welcome to another in our series of A Better Day. I'm State Senator Sam Slom, the Senate Minority Leader, and for the next few minutes, can we talk? There's a lot of things that have happened during the last 30 days, and here we are running up to the end of the year already. Can you believe it? Costco had their artificial Christmas trees out in October. We're getting ads already. Thanksgiving is coming soon, and the end of the year. And we're already looking to 2015. And last month, in October, we had a special session called by the State Senate. It was only 2 days long. Well, we had a couple other days because we had State Senate Judiciary Committee hearings. We had 3 judicial nominees that Governor Abercrombie had nominated for 2 circuit court appointments and 1 district court appointment. The names had been supplied by the Judicial Selection Commission, and in the case of the district court judge, by Chief Justice Mark Rechtenwald. And the way the law works, once the governor makes his or her decision on the nominees and presents them to the legislature, the Senate, has 30 days in which to hold hearings and to take action. If the Senate does not do that, then the nominees automatically become judges. So we did have our hearings, probably the last hearing of the year in the Judiciary/Labor Committee. All 3 were approved. There was advised and consent by the Judiciary Committee. They went to the full Senate, and all of them were unanimously also approved. So 3 new judges. However, the governor also made some interim appointments of Board of Regents members and land board members and election members. They were not acted upon by this state Senate. So what that means is they're serving on an interim basis, but they still have to be confirmed by the Senate, or the new governor may submit additional or new names. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Anyway, the big news, of course, was the 2014 election. Did you vote? Of course you did. You watch this program, you're active, you're involved, and you vote. But Hawaii, once again, fell way short in terms of voter participation. A little bit better than the primary, but still under estimates for a lot of people and a lot of hopes. And the problem is we keep throwing this word change around. Even our president used that in his initial campaign back in 2008. Remember, it was hope and change. But we haven't gotten the change. It's like, you know, the continuing joke when people go away from Hawaii for either a vacation, long vacation, or they move to the mainland, then they come back years later, and everything's the same. Maybe it's a little worse in terms of restrooms and number of homeless, but everything is basically the same, and so are generally the people in office. Well, look, if we don't have a bigger voter turnout, if we don't have more people talking about issues, then we don't get changes. And we didn't have too many changes this past election. There will be a lot of new faces in the House and the Senate. In the Senate, we lost 3 veterans. Clayton He, who was defeated not defeated, he decided to run for lieutenant governor and was defeated in the Democrat primary. Malama Solomon, who was defeated in the Democratic primary election. And David Ige, of course, who went on to other things. But those were 3 key senators out of the 25-member group. So it's going to have many differences during 2015. Number 1 is going to be if Donna Mercado Kim holds on to the presidency, which she likely will. But the question is going to be who's going to take David Ige's place as Ways and Means Chair. It's probably the single most powerful position in either the House or the Senate, because the ultimate decision of what gets passed, what gets paid, what gets authorized, whether it's a tax or it's a new program, comes down to the will of the Ways and Means Committee. So it's going to be interesting. There's a lot of jockeying for positions to see what happens there, and we'll, of course, keep you abreast of what happens. And the new 2015 legislative session will start on Wednesday, January 21st. So here's a reminder. If you or a group that you're involved in is very passionate about a certain kind of legislation, something you would like to see introduced, this is the time to do it. This is the time to talk to your legislator or to somebody on the committee that bill is likely to be sent to. Talk now before the session starts in mid-January. There will be a lot of things on the docket, but because this is an odd-numbered year, the number one thing will be the 2-year operating budget. And by 2016, a year from then, there's already expectations that the state is in financial difficulties, and by 2016 will not have a cash balance, which means technically the state would be broke unless it either cuts its spending tremendously or adds additional tax or new sources of revenues. So we'll have to see how 2015 plays out, but it's going to be sure that the economy has not rebounded to the point that either the Council of Revenues or Ways and Means and the House Finance Committee will feel strongly enough that there'll be sufficient revenues to take care of all of the programs that all of the people want. And that's part of the problem. Every year more people come in, they want more money, they say that their program is the most important, and in terms of priority, it's number one. We have to learn to do a better job of prioritizing, just like you do, like every family, like every small business. There are things that you would like to do, there are things that you'd like to spend money on, but you can't do it. You don't have the money, and so you have to prioritize. Well, the problem with the legislature is that when groups and individuals come in with their priorities, each one of them thinks their priority is the most important, number one. Can't be. So there'll be a lot of deliberations, and you can get involved in 2015. There'll be ample opportunity for you to do it in person or by watching Olelo, watching hearings, or by emailing or coming down or talking to your legislator. We'll talk more about that probably in the next program. But let's review some of the things that are still on the plate here as we wind down in 2014 and as we try to assess what's going to happen in terms of the changes legislatively. As I said, basically we didn't make major changes because we didn't have a large voter turnout, and we didn't have people, again, that concentrate on issues. We are emotion driven as a people. Now, there's not anything necessarily wrong with that. The problem is, though, if you vote for emotion, if you vote for a guy or a gal because you like the way they look, or you like their family, or you like the high school they graduated from, then when the tough issues come up and you hadn't heard from them on that, and they hadn't talked about that during the campaign, then you say, why didn't somebody tell me? Well, some of us have been trying to tell you. By the way, as the head of the Senate minority, just to make it clear, my job is not to be against everything. In fact, probably 90% of the time I vote on a bipartisan basis with the overwhelming Democrat majority. But it is the responsibility of a responsible and accountable minority to bring up questions, to bring up issues, to discuss them, and if need be, to vote against what we consider to be poor legislation or legislation that's going to be harmful. Often we're the only vote against a certain program, and some people say, well, you're being negative. It's not that you're being negative, but as a parent, for example, even though you love your children, you can't always say yes because it's not the right thing to do. And they have to learn to be accountable and sustainable. We talk about sustainability all the time, and yet we're less sustainable now than we were 10 years ago or 20 years ago. We also talk about things without knowing the true costs or all of the implications. Good example of that, clean energy. We talk about clean energy alternatives all the time, and we need alternative energy. Absolutely. We don't want to be dependent on fossil fuels, and certainly on those people from the Middle East and elsewhere. But it's been a national policy to deny us our own drilling in our own country, where we could be number one in oil. So everybody looks to some of the glamorous things, some of the alternatives like wind energy and solar energy and geothermal. And they tell us that not only are they clean, but that they represent a viable alternative. Well, they do in part. They are a viable alternative, but people don't discuss the cost. For example, were you aware that since we started putting more of an emphasis on wind energy and solar energy, that our regular costs of energy through our monopoly HECO have gone up even more? We always were the highest costing energy producing or energy consuming state, And we still are, even with these alternatives. Why? Because they're not free. Because there's no such thing as free energy. There are costs. There are infrastructure costs. There are costs for you. If you want to put in solar, or you want to put in PV, all of these things. Geothermal on the Big Island has worked tremendously and has been very active, and it could be expanded. But still you have criticism against geothermal, and you have the government taking a bigger share in terms of taxes and fees from that industry. So there's nothing free, because those costs are always passed on. The costs of government to business are always passed on to the consumer. So in the end, you're going to pay for it anyway. And people usually don't look at the cost. They look at, well, we got to get rid of that fossil fuel. We've got to have wind. We've got to have windmills and turbines everywhere, except that we still don't have the battery storage power at night to save the energy. It's not consistent, because some days, as you know, and we found out in the last couple months with tropical storms and hurricanes, that oftentimes the trade winds absolutely stop for a couple days or a week, and then we're really stuck, not only with humidity, but the lack of energy production. So while we should be looking at alternative energy, we should be looking at things like liquefied natural gas and other things that we can use in our state to balance our energy portfolio. We should be cognizant of the fact that all of these things have costs, and that ultimately we pay the costs. There's no such thing as free energy. But if we can become more energy independent, that's a good thing, as long as I say, we recognize both the costs and some of the unintended consequences. Well, we still have to talk about our economy. Why? Because our economy has not turned around. Either has the national economy. Gee, last month you watched the tremendous swings in the stock market daily. Down 200, up 150, down 300, up 75, down and up and down. And what is that all about? It's about the uncertainty. And the market doesn't like uncertainty. People don't like uncertainty. People don't like change, really. They get into a habit. They would rather stay in a bad job, a bad relationship, or a bad community rather than change, because at least they know what that is. Uncertainty is risky. Freedom is risky. That's why so many people are dominated by authoritarian or collectivist governments. That's why we have so much, in my opinion, collectivist government here in Hawaii. We have the government telling us what to do, who to hire, where to go, what to eat, all of these things. And it's growing. It's not shrinking. And part of that is because individuals feel more comfortable not having to strike out on their own, and so they will give up parts of their freedom for more and more of this control. I don't think that's a healthy thing. But we have reached a point in our community and nationally where more and more people have bought into the so-called entitlement society. They believe that they're entitled to certain things. They want the government to take care of them. They want the government to subsidize them. That's what that vote on not charter amendment, but constitutional amendment number 4 was all about, a couple weeks ago, and that was about whether or not all of the taxpayers should subsidize all of the private schools. And you had some very interesting lines drawn. The HSTA was opposed to it. The gubernatorial candidate, David Ige, was opposed to it. I was opposed to it. So you had a lot of different people with a lot of different thoughts. No one's against early education. No one's against education. But in any of these programs and any of the things that we try, we've got to learn to look at the costs. We've got to become more economically akamai. And if you do, for example, you know that our economy has not turned around. Now, I know you're going to tell me, yeah, but Sam, we've got the lowest unemployment rate that we've had in many years, and one of the lowest unemployment rates in the country. And I would say, yes, that's true. But why is that true? It's true in part because a lot of people have dropped out of the workforce. Nationally, 92 million Americans are not working. We have people that are absolutely dependent on their Social Security or on their unemployment compensation or on workers' compensation, not on salary and not on income. We have people that have given up looking for a decent job. We have people that are underemployed and they work 2 or 3 part-time jobs. So just looking at the unemployment rate itself is not really an accurate barometer of how healthy the economy is. looking at what's available in our community, the number of stores that have closed, the number of people that have downsized, the number of establishments that are not hiring. Those are the things that you look at. Yes, there are businesses and industries that are growing in our community and nationally. That's a great thing. We want to applaud that. We want more success. We want more job place expansion, but we want it in the private sector or in the free market sector, not in government. And what we've seen over the years, a gradual increase in the number of people that are working for government, has not solved our problems, has created more problems. So look at the economy and know that it's only by legislative policies such as taxes and regulations and fees and the permit process that determine whether or not we'll have a robust free market, whether or not we'll create more jobs, whether or not we'll have more people willing to take a risk to go into these businesses. And that's what we need. We need to encourage that. And Hawaii's got great opportunities to encourage people to go into business. But once they go into business, then you've got to encourage them. You've got to have a healthy and fair business climate. It can't be hostile to those who are the risk takers. So we'll see what goes on. We'll continue to work for better things. And we'll see what happens with a new state administration and perhaps a legislature that is more willing to take a look at business issues and economic issues more so than in recent years. We have also had hearings and briefings over the last month about Ebola. Ebola, remember we had our president who said nothing to worry about Ebola and it won't come to America, da-da-da-da-da-da. And then we had cases in America. We even had in, was it late September, early October, a potential case at Queens Medical Center, which thankfully turned out to be negative and not to be Ebola. But we've had legislative hearings, and we've had the healthcare community gear up just in case, because it's something that you have to be aware of and be prepared for. You know, back on the mainland in early October, when we had our first diagnosed case, and then we had healthcare personnel, there was arguments over what the protocols were and what you had to do, what the safety procedures were. Well, those are the kinds of things you want to do in advance. So I think that Hawaii is becoming prepared. I think a number of things have been done and more things will be done in the future, and that's a good thing. But we can't take any of these things for granted because, as we know, our number one industry, our visitor industry, which is kind of so-so this year compared to last year, it's been leveling off. Part of it is the economy. There are a number of other things that are involved. But we do know that the Japanese and the Asian visitor component is a large and important component. And we know from past experience, if there's any kind of tragedy or threat or disease, they don't come. They don't travel. So that's why it's in everyone's best interest to make sure that we are proactive on this and other issues as well. You know that the State Senate in October had wrapped up its, I guess it was a 10 or 12-part investigation of the state hospital system. It was primarily about injured workers and, again, the protocols and the procedures in place. The Senate submitted a document with necessary reforms, and we'll have to see if those reforms are initiated at the state hospital. Part of the state hospital problems stem from the fact that we put some very violent people there. We have changed it from one type of state hospital as a medical facility to becoming a hospital that takes care of all kinds of patients. And one of the suggestions was we even send the most violent of patients to the mainland. Now there's a surprise, right? Because here we are trying to get back prisoners from the mainland, saying that it's inhumane to separate them, and yet we're looking at the state hospital and perhaps sending them to the mainland. So there's going to be a lot of things during the 2015 legislative session that we're going to look at. And just one more thing on energy. We had a lot of projects, notably rooftop PV projects that are very expensive, that have been stopped because of HECO's changing their rules and because they're using an excuse. We want to make sure it's absolutely safe before we allow a go-ahead. Well, that's created a lot of problems for businesses who hired additional people, who bought additional inventory, for individuals like perhaps yourselves, who wanted to buy PV but had to either take out a second mortgage or equity loan or some kind of loan to get the money because it's not cheap. And all of a sudden, when a lot of those projects are put on hold and the urgency, which was urgent back in 2013, is more urgent in 2014 and we haven't done very much about it, you've got to ask the question. One of the questions is, do we continue to need and can we afford a state energy monopoly? I've introduced legislation every year for probably the last 8 years or so to deregulate Hawaiian Electric and deregulate the electrical industry so that we have options. So if you're talking about clean energy alternatives, I think it's only reasonable that we have clean anti-monopoly initiatives as well. What do you think? You agree? You disagree? You can always call me. You can always contact my office. Hey, let's talk about the rail for a moment. Look, I don't want to rub anything in, but we told you that the costs were going to go up. We told you that the disruptions were going to continue. And right now, even the federal government is questioning whether or not this rail project in Honolulu, which is over budget and which is now seeking to change certain things, is going to be able to do that. Certainly not on time, certainly not within budget. It also comes at the expense of a bus service which was recognized nationally as the best mass transit system in the country and locally. But what happened? A lot of the routes got curtailed or canceled altogether, or changes were made, and it was less convenient. And if the rail continues, and I keep saying that, maybe I'm an old warhorse, but I keep saying if the rail continues, because I don't believe it will be. I don't believe it has a good business plan. I don't believe the money is there. I believe that Hart is going to ask the legislature again to not only extend the general excise tax, but maybe even to expand it. And it's something we should not do. They made promises and they're not keeping the promises. But should the rail go through, one of the early victims would be the good bus service that we have, because in order to boost up the ridership figures, which were overestimated from the beginning, they'll have to curtail more bus service to get you forcibly to ride that rail. But we're a long way away from that. We're coming up, we're still in 2014, we're coming up on 2015, and we're not talking about any service before 2020 at the earliest. So we'll have to see how that goes as well. The homeless problem, it's still a problem. Has it gotten any better? I don't think so. How about you? It's reached out into more communities. Certainly people get moved around. They go from one beach park to another or one street corner to another. All of the programs that have been designed thus far, the Home First program, for example, and the compassionate programs, they haven't worked because we treat the homeless as one group altogether. And we've got the government trying to reach solutions, whereas we haven't been able to do that. We haven't clearly identified different solutions for different people. The medically homeless, the mentally homeless, the drug-using homeless, the criminal element, the people they don't want any rules, they don't want any responsibilities, they want to be on the street, the veterans, and then the people that have become homeless because they can't afford our cost of living. You can't tackle, in my humble opinion, the entire homeless problem. You've got to look at certain areas of it and try to address them and do it properly. And you also have to gain the trust of those that are homeless. They don't believe in the government. They don't believe in people helping them. Many of them don't want to be helped. Those that do are waiting to see. And when we announce a program and it comes online 2 years later, 3 years later, and helps a handful of people, that doesn't make a difference. So it's going to continue to be a problem that we have to solve. And it's something that it does affect all of us, and it does affect all of our neighborhoods. Getting back to the rail situation, though, for just a moment, you also note that there is still major construction projects going on the H1, Kamehameha Highway, Mililani, Hawaii Kai, the Kalanianiole Highway, all of these things. And when Hart starts trying to take more businesses through eminent domain, you're going to have more disruption, you're going to have more unemployment. And by the way, the Hart board just approved another contract for Mr. Grabowskis, the head of the project, and also a salary increase. So we don't have consequences for poor government action here. We don't have it for the university, for what's happened there. We don't have it for the Department of Health or the Health Connector. We don't have it in the Department of Transportation. The costs of overtime continue at a rapid pace. You have people that their regular salary is $30,000 or $40,000 a year, but they're earning $90,000 to $100,000 on overtime. Why is that? In corrections, in transportation, at the university, in a lot of different areas. These are things that have to be controlled, can be controlled, and we were promised years ago that they were going to be controlled. Well, you've got to help us be more vigilant. You've got to help those of us in office hold our feet to the fire. You've got to participate more. You've got to get involved at whatever level you can, whatever time, because you can still make a difference. In fact, you're the only ones that are going to make a difference. We in government, we resist change even more than you do. So there are many things that you can do. If you want more tips, you want to talk to me, give me a call anytime. If you need any help, call my office at any time. We're very happy to help you, and we're very happy to join with organizations like the Public Access Room or the Legislative Reference Bureau or Olelo to get the word out. We call this a better day because we're still optimistic. Hawaii can turn things around. Hawaii can have a better economy. Hawaii can take better care of all the people within the state. Then we can have a better day. Thank you for joining me, and have a wonderful day. Aloha.